My name is Jason Wilson, and at 30 I never expected my mother to show up begging for $350,000 to save her son. 16 years earlier, she had kicked me out of my own home to make room for her unborn child with my new stepfather. My grandmother Eleanor took me in becoming the parent I needed. The day my mother returned desperate and broken, Grandma grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into the yard. The journal my father left behind before his death revealed secrets that left my mother speechless and changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how family betrayal led to unexpected redemption. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if the perfect family I remember was ever real. From ages 6 to 12, my life seemed straight out of a heartwarming family movie. My father, Robert Wilson, owned a moderately successful construction company. He was the kind of dad who would come home tired from physical labor, but would still find the energy to play catch in the backyard or help me with my science projects. Dad had calloused hands, but the gentlest touch when bandaging my scraped knees. My mother, Margaret Maggie, to her friends, was beautiful in that classic, understated way. She kept our modest suburban home spotless, volunteered at my school, and always made sure we had home-cooked meals. At least that is what I remember. Perhaps I only saw what I wanted to see. Family comes first, Jason, my father would say at our Sunday dinners. These weekly gatherings were sacred, often including my grandmother, Eleanor, Dad's mother, who lived just 20 minutes away. Grandma Eleanor was warm and practical with a sharp wit that made my father laugh until he cried. She baked the best apple pie in the state and never showed up without a small gift for me, usually books about buildings and architecture that fed my growing interest in structures and design. Our house was not fancy, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in a middle-class neighborhood with a yard big enough for a dog and a basketball hoop. But it was mine. My room had walls covered with posters of famous buildings and bridges, my desk cluttered with drawing paper and colored pencils. I had been sketching buildings since I could hold a crayon. Dad noticed this early on and encouraged it. "You have got a good eye for structure, son," he would say, examining my childish drawings with genuine interest. "Maybe one day you will design something I can build." Every summer, Dad would take me camping at Lake Tahoe. Mom usually stayed behind, claiming she was not the outdoorsy type. During these trips, Dad taught me how to fish, build a fire, and identify constellations. More importantly, he taught me about integrity. "A real man stands by his word, Jason," he would say as we sat by the campfire. "And a real man takes care of his family no matter what." I can still smell the pine trees and wood smoke from those nights, still feel the weight of his arm around my shoulders as we gazed at the stars. Those memories became my anchors in the storms that followed. Christmas, when I was 12, was the last perfect holiday we would have. Dad gave me my first professional drawing set, and Mom seemed genuinely happy as we decorated the tree together. Grandma Eleanor brought her famous cinnamon rolls, and we spent the day in pajamas watching holiday movies and playing board games. I remember watching my parents slow dancing in the kitchen to White Christmas and thinking how lucky I was. There were signs, of course. Signs I was too young to recognize. The way Mom would check her phone when Dad was not looking, her increasing complaints about our modest lifestyle, the growing frequency of her girls' nights out, the new clothes and hairstyles that Dad barely seemed to notice, too exhausted from working overtime to provide for us. "Your mother just likes nice things," Jason, Dad would say when I mentioned her complaints. "Nothing wrong with wanting a better life for your family." I did not realize then that her vision of a better life might not include both of us. The photo album from those years shows a smiling family, Dad with his arm around Mom, me in the middle, gap-toothed and grinning. Grandma Eleanor often behind us, her eyes watching Mom with an expression I could not decipher then. Now I recognize it as vigilance. Dad and I had so many projects together. We built a treehouse in the backyard when I was 10. It was nothing fancy, but he treated the project like we were constructing a skyscraper, teaching me about load-bearing supports and the importance of a solid foundation. "Always build on something strong, Jason," he would say, tightening a bolt. In houses and in life. If only he had followed his own advice when choosing my mother. The headaches began in January, just after my 13th birthday. Dad would wince and press his fingers against his temples, but he would wave away Mom's occasional questions. "Just tired, Maggie. Big project at the Henderson site. By March, the headaches were accompanied by dizzy spells. Dad would sometimes stop mid-sentence, closing his eyes until the wave passed. Mom finally insisted he see a doctor after he nearly collapsed at the dinner table one night. The diagnosis came like a wrecking ball: glioblastoma, an aggressive brain tumor, terminal. 6 months to a year, the doctor said with practiced sympathy. I stood in the hallway outside the consultation room, eavesdropping because Mom had told me to wait outside. I was not supposed to hear, but those words burned themselves into my memory. Mom's first question chilled me. Even then, what about insurance? How will we manage financially? Not how will we fight this, or are there experimental treatments? Her mind went straight to money. Dad declined rapidly over the next few months. The strong man who could carry lumber on his shoulder became thin and pale. The construction company was left in the hands of his business partner, Dennis, who promised to take care of everything. Mom started having long phone conversations in the backyard, her voice too low to hear. My grades plummeted. How could I focus on algebra when my father was dying? My teachers were understanding, except for Mr. Henley, who called me lazy. Grandma Eleanor showed up at school the next day and had a conversation with him. He never bothered me again. Dad and Grandma had many private conversations during this time. They would stop talking when I entered the room, forcing smiles that did not reach their eyes. Once I overheard Grandma say, "Robert, you need to protect him." "She will," before Mom interrupted by entering the room. The last coherent day Dad had was in August. The summer heat was stifling, but his room was cold from the air conditioning. Mom insisted on keeping it maximum. He asked to speak with me alone, and Mom reluctantly left. He pulled out a watch from his bedside drawer, a simple Timex with a worn leather band. "This was my father's," he said, his voice weak but clear. "And his father's before him. Not valuable except in what it represents. Time, and how we choose to spend it." He pressed it into my hand, his fingers frighteningly light against mine. "You are going to be the man of the house soon, Jason," he continued. "But remember, you are still a boy, too. Your childhood matters. Your dreams matter." His eyes, sunken, but still bright with intelligence, held mine. "Trust your grandmother. She sees clearly what I was blind to for too long." I did not understand what he meant then. The next day, he slipped into a coma. 3 weeks later, he was gone. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and platitudes. Mom stood straight-backed and dry-eyed, accepting condolences with perfect composure. I sobbed openly, unashamed, Grandma's arm around my shoulders, the only thing keeping me upright. I noticed Dad's business partner, Dennis, speaking intently with Mom after the service, their heads close together. She nodded at whatever he was saying, a small, tight smile on her face. The reading of the will took place a week later. I expected to be excluded, but Dad's lawyer, Mr. Goldman, insisted I be present. "Robert was very specific about this," he said when Mom protested. The bombshell came halfway through the dry legal recitation. Dad had left the house and a substantial trust fund for my education in Grandma Eleanor's name, to be managed for my benefit until I turned 25. "This is ridiculous," Mom hissed. "I am his wife, his widow. You received the life insurance payout and his business shares, Mrs. Wilson," Mr. Goldman replied coolly. Robert was quite explicit about the distribution of assets. Mom's face was a mask of fury, quickly controlled when she noticed me watching. But I had seen it, the naked rage. And something else. Calculation. That night I heard her on the phone again. "It is a setback, that is all she was saying. The old bat cannot keep me from what is mine forever. We just need to adjust the timeline." I did not know then who was on the other end of that call. I would find out soon enough. People say grief changes you. For my mother, the transformation was dramatic and suspiciously swift. The modest clothes and simple hairstyle gave way to designer outfits and an expensive blonde highlight job within weeks of Dad's funeral. The home-cooked meals were replaced by takeout or my own amateur attempts at cooking. The mother who had attended every school function was suddenly too busy to ask about my homework. 2 months after we buried my father, Mom introduced me to Victor Hammond over dinner at an upscale restaurant I had never been to before. "Victor is a business consultant," she explained, watching me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. We met through mutual friends. Victor was tall, tanned, and expensively dressed with the kind of white teeth you only get from cosmetic dentistry. He spoke loudly and laughed at his own jokes. He called me sport and champ and ordered for my mother without asking what she wanted. "Your mom tells me you like to draw buildings," he said clearly, making an effort. "That is neat. Maybe you will design my next vacation home, huh?" He winked at my mother, who giggled like a schoolgirl. I hated him immediately. A week later, I was looking for Mom's phone charger when I found her iPad unlocked. I had never snooped before, but something made me pause when I saw a dating app notification. The profile had been created 3 weeks before Dad died, while he was in the hospital, while she was playing the devoted wife. The profile photo was one I had never seen before. Mom in a low-cut dress, looking years younger. Her status: complicated situation, resolving soon. Looking for a fresh start. That same night, rummaging through old photos in the living room, I found receipts tucked into an album. Dinner for 2 at Maxwell's, the fanciest restaurant in town. Date: 2 days after Dad had been admitted to the hospital for the last time. The second signature on the credit card slip was not my father's. Mom spent less and less time at home, often leaving me alone with frozen dinners and half-hearted excuses about work meetings and support groups. My 14th birthday came and went with only a hastily purchased gift card and a cupcake from the grocery store. Grandma Eleanor became my lifeline. She would come over when Mom was out bringing proper meals and checking my homework. She never criticized my mother directly, but her tight lips and careful questions told me enough. "Is your mother home often, Jason?" she would ask. "Not really," I would answer. Her tone spoke volumes. 5 months after Dad's death, Victor moved in. Not gradually, with a toothbrush here and a change of clothes there. All at once, with 3 suitcases and a home office setup that took over the dining room. The house that had been a shrine to Dad's memory. His work boots still by the door. His coffee mug still on the shelf was suddenly being refreshed and updated. Dad's armchair disappeared first, then the fishing photos. Then the color of the living room walls changed from the blue he had picked to a more modern gray. It was like watching him die all over again, one erased memory at a time. Dinner became an excruciating exercise in pretending we were a normal family. Victor would talk about his business deals while Mom hung on every word. I would push food around my plate and count the minutes until I could escape to my room. "Jason, Victor is offering you valuable business insights," Mom would chide when I remained silent. "You could learn a lot from him." "I am sure Jason is just processing," Victor would say magnanimously. "It takes boys time to adjust to new dynamics." The condescension in his voice made me want to throw my plate at the wall. 7 months after Dad died. 7 months, Mom announced she was pregnant. She and Victor beamed at me across the kitchen island, clearly expecting congratulations. That is, fast, was all I could manage. "When you find love, Jason, you do not waste time," Victor said, his arm around my mother's waist. "Life is short, as we all know too well." The casual reference to my father's death made me physically ill. I mumbled an excuse and fled to my room. That night I heard them talking in the living room. "He will come around," Victor was saying. "Teenagers are naturally difficult, and he has been through a lot." "I know," Mom sighed. "I just thought he would be happier for us. For me, finding love again." "The important thing is that we are happy," Victor replied. "And starting our family." Our family. As if I was not part of it. As if Dad had never existed. The next day, interior decorators arrived to discuss nursery options. Mom did not consult me or warn me. I came home from school to find strange people measuring walls and discussing color schemes. In my father's house, for another man's child. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Tuesday evening in April. I had been living with my mother and Victor for nearly 8 months, existing like a ghost in what used to be my home. I came home from track practice to find them at the kitchen table, heads together over floor plans. "Oh, good, you are home," Mom said, her voice overly bright. "We wanted to talk to you about something important." Victor smiled his too perfect smile. "It is about the baby and the house situation." My stomach dropped. Something in their expressions, excitement poorly masked with fake concern, told me whatever was coming would not be good for me. We have been thinking, Mom continued, about space. The nursery needs to be close to our bedroom for night feedings and such. I waited, not helping them along. Your room would be perfect, she finally said. It is right next to ours and gets the morning sun, which would be so nice for the baby. I stared at her. My room. You want to take my room? Not take. Victor interjected smoothly. We thought you could move to the spare room. It is a win-win. The spare room was half the size of mine, tucked in the back corner of the house. It had been used for storage since Dad died. We will help you move everything this weekend, Mom added, already moving on as if my agreement was assumed. I am thinking pale yellow for the nursery walls. Gender neutral, you know. I said nothing, just turned and walked down the hall toward the spare room. Opening the door, I found not the dusty storage space I expected, but a half-finished home office. Victor's golf trophies were already on shelves. A desk had been assembled in the center. Boxes of my things from the storage were piled haphazardly in one corner. Oh, Mom said from behind me. We thought we would get a head start. Where am I supposed to sleep? The question came out flat, emotionless. Mom and Victor exchanged a look I could not interpret. Well, that is the other thing we wanted to discuss, Mom said, suddenly finding the door frame very interesting. Victor needs a home office for his business calls, and with the baby coming, we really need more space. So where do I go? I repeated. Victor cleared his throat. Your grandmother has that big house all to herself. We thought maybe you could stay with her. Just temporarily, of course. Temporarily, I echoed. Just until we figure out a better arrangement, Mom said quickly. Maybe when the baby is a bit older. Or if we move to a bigger house eventually. The unspoken truth hung in the air. There was no place for me in their new family. I was being discarded, an inconvenient reminder of my father and the life before Victor. Does Grandma know about this plan? I asked. Another exchanged glance. I thought I would call her tomorrow, Mom said, but I am sure she will be thrilled to have you. She is always saying she wishes she saw more of you. That night I lay awake in the room that would soon no longer be mine. The walls were still covered with my architectural drawings and posters. The desk where I had done homework while Dad helped me still held my school projects. The window still had the small crack from when I had accidentally hit it with a baseball when I was 10, and Dad had laughed instead of getting angry. This was my home. My father's home. And I was being kicked out to make way for their new family. The next morning, Mom was on the phone with a decorator discussing nursery themes when I left for school. When I returned, she announced that Grandma Eleanor would be coming the next day to discuss arrangements. She is so excited to have you stay with her, Mom said, not meeting my eyes. And you will have so much more space there. It is really better for everyone. Everyone meaning you and Victor, I said. Jason, she sighed. You are old enough to understand sacrifices. This is what families do. They adjust to new circumstances. Dad would never have kicked me out of my own home. Her face hardened. Well, your father is not here, is he? And we have to make practical decisions for the family we have now. The family you have now, I corrected her. I am just excess baggage. Do not be so dramatic, she snapped. This is a practical solution to a space problem. You are 14, not 4. I should not have to explain basic logistics to you. I spent that evening packing my belongings. Tears silently streaming down my face as I carefully wrapped the model bridge Dad and I had built together and the watch he had given me before he died. Through my bedroom wall, I could hear Mom and Victor discussing paint colors and crib styles. Not once did either of them check on me or offer to help. The next morning, Grandma Eleanor arrived her ancient Buick, pulling into the driveway at precisely 9 o'clock. Her face was a mask of controlled fury as Mom explained the temporary arrangement. I see was all, Grandma said, her eyes flicking to me, then back to my mother. And when exactly did you plan to discuss this with me, Margaret? I am discussing it now, Mom replied defensively. And it is really the most sensible solution. Jason will be more comfortable with you. And we need the space for the baby. And Victor's office, Grandma added pointedly. He works from home. He needs a professional space. More than your son needs his home. Mom flushed. It is temporary, Mother Wilson. Until we sort out something more permanent. The look that passed between my grandmother and me contained a shared understanding this was not temporary. I was being permanently removed from the equation. As I carried my boxes to Grandma's car, I took a final walk through the house. In the living room, I paused at the one remaining photo of my father tucked in a corner where it was barely visible. I took it off the wall and added it to my box. That is a family photo, Mom protested when she saw me. Then I should have it, I replied, since I am still his family even if you are not. We drove away, Grandma's car loaded with the boxes containing my childhood. In the rearview mirror, I watched my home, my father's home, grow smaller until it disappeared around a corner. Mom had promised to call that evening to check in. The call never came. Grandma Eleanor's house was nothing like the home I had left behind. It was smaller, older, with creaking wooden floors and wallpaper that had been fashionable sometime during the Nixon administration. But the moment we walked through the door, something fundamental was different. I was wanted here. This is your home now, Jason, Grandma said firmly as we carried in my boxes. For as long as you need it to be. Forever. If that is what works out. She had already prepared the upstairs bedroom for me, painting the walls a deep blue that matched my bedspread from home. She had installed bookshelves for my architecture books and a drafting table by the window that caught the northern light. I noticed you were outgrowing your old desk, she said casually. A serious artist needs proper equipment. That first night after we had unpacked most of my things, Grandma sat me down at the kitchen table with hot chocolate made from scratch, not powder, and looked me straight in the eyes. Your mother has made a terrible mistake, she said without preamble. One day she will regret it deeply. But that is her burden to bear, not yours. I nodded, afraid to speak, lest the tears threatening at the corners of my eyes spill over. I want to be very clear about something, Jason. This situation is not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. Adults are supposed to put their children first. And Margaret has failed in that most basic responsibility. She says it is just temporary, I managed to say. Grandma's expression softened with pity. Oh, my dear boy. We both know that is not true. But here is what is true. You are safe here. You are wanted here. And together we are going to build a life that would make your father proud. The first weeks were hard. I started at a new school mid-semester where I knew no one. The other kids stared at the new boy with too long hair and second-hand clothes. I kept to myself, focusing on my classes and sketching buildings during lunch to avoid the awkwardness of having nowhere to sit. Grandma arranged for me to see Dr. Martinez, a therapist, specializing in adolescent trauma and grief, every Wednesday after school. At first, I resisted sitting in sullen silence during our sessions. It is normal to feel angry, Dr. Martinez said during our third meeting. Abandoned, betrayed. Those are all appropriate responses to what has happened. I am fine, I insisted. No, you are not, he replied calmly. And that is okay. Fine is not the goal right now. Honest is the goal. Gradually, I began to talk. About Dad. About the home I had lost. About the confusion and hurt of being replaced so quickly. About the gnawing fear that I had done something wrong, something that made me unlovable to my own mother. At home, Grandma was a steady, unwavering presence. She never pushed me to talk when I did not want to, but she was always available when I did. She made sure I ate properly, checked my homework, and enforced reasonable boundaries like no staying up past midnight on school nights, even if I was working on a particularly engaging design project. Your father set up a trust fund for your education, she informed me over breakfast one Saturday morning. It is quite substantial. He was determined you would have opportunities no matter what. Did he know? I asked. Did he know Mom would do this? Grandma was silent for a long moment. Your father was a perceptive man, she finally said. And he loved you more than anything in this world. Let us leave it at that for now. 3 months passed before my mother called. Not to speak to me, but to inform Grandma that my half-brother Noah had been born, 7 pounds 6 ounces. A healthy boy. She wants to know if you would like to visit Grandma, said her hand covering the receiver. I did, and I did not. But curiosity won out. The house I had grown up in was unrecognizable. My room, now the nursery, had been painted pale blue with a nautical theme that Dad would have hated. My posters were gone. My bookshelves replaced with white furniture. It was as if I had never existed there. Mom and Victor presented the baby like a prize trophy. Noah was red-faced and wrinkled with a tuft of dark hair that reminded me painfully of Dad's soakrame. "Would you like to hold your brother, Mom?" asked her voice overly bright. I did, awkwardly, cradling the tiny human who had replaced me. Looking down at his innocent face, I could not blame him. He had not asked for any of this, just as I had not. "He looks like Dad," I said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He looks like Victor," Mom said sharply. "Everyone says so." I looked up at Victor with his sandy blonde hair and narrow face, then back at the dark-haired baby with a strong jawline, even in infancy. He looked nothing like Victor. But I said nothing. The visits were rare and always uncomfortable. Mom treated me like a distant acquaintance, making stilted conversation about school and the weather. Victor barely acknowledged me beyond a cursory handshake. A year after Noah was born, they had another baby, my half-sister Emma. I was not invited to the hospital this time, just informed via text message. Meanwhile, my life with Grandma settled into a comfortable routine. My grades improved as I found stability. I joined the school's architecture club and made a few friends who shared my interests. Mr. Patterson, the art teacher, took a special interest in my work and began mentoring me, bringing me advanced books on structural design and arranging for me to shadow a local architect for a school project. "You have real talent, Jason," he told me after I presented a detailed model of a sustainable housing community for a state competition. "With the right education and opportunities, you could go far in this field." By my junior year of high school, I had won several regional design competitions. A portfolio of my work earned me a prestigious scholarship to the architecture program at Cornell University. The day the acceptance letter arrived, Grandma baked a chocolate cake, Dad's favorite, and we celebrated at the kitchen table. "Your father would be so proud," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "So very proud." My mother did not attend my high school graduation. Grandma invited her, of course. The response was a text message. "Prior commitment. Congratulations." Grandma took dozens of photos, cheering loudly when my name was called. My art teacher, Mr. Patterson, and his wife took us out to dinner afterward. They had become a kind of extended family over the years. To Jason, Mr. Patterson toasted, raising his glass. Proof that foundations matter in buildings and in life. Before leaving for college, I made one last attempt to connect with my mother. I drove to the house alone at Grandma's insistence that this was something I needed to do independently, and knocked on the door of my childhood home like a stranger. Mom answered, Noah clinging to her leg and Emma in her arms. She seemed surprised to see me. "Jason, I was not expecting you. I am leaving for Cornell next week," I said. "I thought maybe we could have lunch or something before I go." She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "This is not really a good time. Victor has clients coming over and the kids are being fussy." "Right," I said, stepping back. "No problem. Good luck at school," she offered, already closing the door. "Study hard." Walking back to my car, I realized something profound. I no longer needed her approval or love. I had built a life without her, and it was a good one. College was freedom. Cornell's architecture program challenged me intellectually, while the distance from my hometown provided emotional space to grow beyond the abandoned son I had been. My roommate Derek was a physics major who respected my need for quiet study time and introduced me to his diverse friend group who accepted me without question. Grandma Eleanor called every Sunday evening without fail. She sent care packages, monthly homemade cookies, fresh socks, newspaper clippings of architectural achievements she thought would interest me, and always a short, encouraging note. "Remember who you are," she would write. "Your father's son. My grandson. A young man of integrity and talent." Those notes sustained me through challenging design projects and brutal all-nighters. I kept them in a box under my bed, reading them when the pressure of exams or the occasional loneliness threatened to overwhelm me. In my sophomore year, I met Rachel in an urban planning elective. She was studying environmental science with a focus on sustainable development, brilliant, passionate, and completely unimpressed by the fraternity types who pursued her. Our first conversation was an argument about the practicality of green roofs in cold climates. Our second was over coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into a walk around campus until 2 in the morning. "You listen," she said when I asked why she had agreed to a second date. "Really listen. That is rarer than you might think." Junior year brought an internship opportunity with Hadley & Associates, a prestigious firm specializing in sustainable commercial spaces. The selection process was brutally competitive, over 300 applicants for 5 positions. When the offer came, I called Grandma first. "Of course they chose you," she said, as if there had never been any doubt. "You have been preparing for this your entire life." That summer in Chicago, living in a tiny apartment with 3 other interns, I learned more about practical architecture than in all my classes combined. I also learned that my childhood trauma had given me an unexpected advantage: resilience. When other interns crumbled under the senior architect's criticism or pulled all-nighters in panic before presentations, I remained steady. "Wilson has ice water in his veins," I overheard one supervisor say to another. "Nothing rattles him." If only they knew that after having your mother choose a man she barely knew over you, harsh feedback on building elevations seemed trivial by comparison. Occasionally, Grandma would slip in news about my mother and half-siblings during our calls. Victor's business was struggling. They had to downsize to a smaller house. Noah was showing interest in sports. Emma had started kindergarten. I listened politely, but felt detached, as if she were updating me about distant relatives I had never met. I graduated with honors my thesis project, a mixed-use development designed to revitalize struggling post-industrial communities, receiving special recognition from the department. Grandma Eleanor flew in for the ceremony, proudly wearing a Cornell sweatshirt despite the May heat. "Your father would be bursting with pride," she said as we posed for photos, her arm around my waist. "I certainly am." My mother sent a generic congratulations card with a $50 gift card. No signature, just her name printed at the bottom. Hadley & Associates offered me a junior architect position immediately after graduation. The salary was enough to rent a decent apartment and start putting money aside, following Grandma's lifelong advice about financial independence. "Save 20% of everything you earn," she had drilled into me since I was a teenager, mowing lawns for pocket money. The world respects a man who can stand on his own financial feet. At 25, I made my first attempt to reconnect with my mother. It was Christmas, and some combination of holiday sentimentality and Rachel's gentle encouragement led me to drive to her house with carefully chosen gifts: a construction set for Noah, now 11, art supplies for Emma, 10, and a cashmere scarf for my mother. The house was smaller than our family home, but still in an upscale neighborhood. Victor answered the door, his once perfect smile now strained. "Jason, this is unexpected." "I was in town visiting Grandma," I explained. "Thought I would stop by. Brought some Christmas gifts." Quote. He hesitated before stepping aside. "Come in, I guess. Maggie, you have a visitor." The reunion was stiff, formal. Mom had aged noticeably, fine lines around her eyes and mouth that makeup could not quite conceal. Noah and Emma were polite but distant, clearly having been told little about their older half-brother. We made awkward small talk for 30 minutes before Mom glanced at her watch. "We have dinner reservations at 7, she said, but this was nice. I left with the distinct impression that my presence had been an inconvenience rather than a welcome surprise. That was the last time I attempted to force a relationship that existed only in my wishful thinking. My career continued its upward trajectory. At 27, I was promoted to project lead for a major development in Seattle. The success of that project led to features in architectural magazines and speaking invitations at industry conferences. By 29, I had started my own firm, Wilson Sustainable Design, focusing on environmentally responsible urban renewal projects. The timing coincided with Grandma Eleanor's decision to sell her house. At 83, the stairs were becoming too much for her. I am not moving to one of those depressing retirement communities, she declared when I broached the subject, full of old people playing bingo and complaining about their digestion. You are old people, Grandma, I teased. Chronologically, perhaps. Spiritually, I am in my prime. The solution was obvious. I purchased a modernist home outside Boston with a self-contained guest suite on the main floor, complete with its own small kitchen and accessible bathroom. Grandma moved in bringing only her favorite furniture and photographs. The rest is just stuff, she said as we sorted through decades of accumulated possessions. And at my age, stuff becomes a burden. Rachel and I had been dating for 7 years by then. She had completed her PhD in environmental science and was teaching at Boston University while consulting on sustainable urban planning projects, many of them with my firm. Our relationship had evolved from college romance to adult partnership built on shared values and mutual respect. I think it is time I made an honest woman of you, I joked one evening as we walked along the Charles River. If you will have a man with an octogenarian roommate and enough emotional baggage to fill a cargo ship. I adore your grandmother, Rachel replied, squeezing my hand. And as for the baggage, we all have it. Yours just came with better design sensibilities. We were engaged by sunset, the vintage sapphire ring that had been my grandmother's now on Rachel's finger. Life settled into a pattern of work, home, and planning for the future. My firm expanded, taking on larger projects and hiring talented young architects who shared my vision. Grandma held court in our home, charming clients at dinner parties and offering razor-sharp insights on business strategies. Rachel's academic career flourished, her research on urban heat islands gaining national attention. We were building the kind of family I had lost, one based on choice and love rather than obligation and blood. And then on a Sunday evening in May, the doorbell rang. I was reviewing blueprints for a community center project when the doorbell echoed through the house. Rachel was at an academic conference in Toronto, and Grandma Eleanor was watching her British mystery shows in her suite. Not expecting visitors, I approached the door cautiously and checked the security camera. The woman on my doorstep was both familiar and a stranger. Her blonde hair had faded, her face lined with stress and what looked like recent crying. But the eyes, those were the same eyes that had once watched me open Christmas presents, had once turned cold when asking me to leave my childhood home. My mother. For a moment I considered not answering. 16 years had passed since she had kicked me out. 14 since I had last attempted to maintain any relationship. What could she possibly want now? Curiosity won out. I opened the door. Jason, she breathed as if she had been running. Thank God you are home. Mom. I replied, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. This is unexpected. I know. I'm sorry to just show up like this. Her eyes darted past me, scanning the entryway. Could I come in, please? It is important. I stepped aside, allowing her into the home she had never seen, the life she had chosen not to be part of. She entered hesitantly, taking in the modern architecture, the awards displayed discreetly on a side table, the framed photo of Rachel and me at the summit of Mount Washington. Your home is beautiful, she offered. You have done well for yourself. Thank you. What brings you here, Mom? It has been a long time. She clutched her purse tight, her knuckles white with tension. It is Noah. He is sick. Very sick. Something cold settled in my stomach. Despite everything, Noah was my half-brother. An innocent in our family's dysfunction. What kind of sick? Leukemia. Diagnosed 3 months ago. Her voice broke. The standard treatments are not working. There is an experimental therapy at Mayo Clinic, but insurance will not cover it. We have exhausted our savings, taken second and third mortgages. Victor's business failed 2 years ago. We have been barely staying afloat. I waited already, seeing where this was headed. The treatment costs $350,000, she finally said. I have nowhere else to turn. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know what I did was wrong. But he is your brother, Jason, and he is only 16. A complex wave of emotions washed over me. Sympathy for Noah's suspicion of my mother's sudden reappearance. Anger at being contacted only when money was needed. Where is Victor in all this? I asked. Her eyes dropped. He left. When Noah's treatment started failing and the medical bills kept mounting, said he could not handle the stress. Moved to Florida with his administrative assistant. Before I could respond, a voice came from behind me. I thought I heard the doorbell. Grandma Eleanor stood in the hallway, leaning slightly on her cane. At 89, she was frailer than in my youth, but her eyes were sharp as ever. They narrowed when they landed on my mother. Margaret. What an unpleasant surprise. Mother Wilson. My mother's voice cooled noticeably. You are living here. Jason takes care of his family, Grandma replied pointedly. Some people do, you know. Grandma, I began, attempting to diffuse the tension. Mom is here because... Let me guess, Grandma interrupted. She needs money. My mother flushed. My son is dying. Your grandson. And now he is your priority. After 16 years of barely acknowledging your firstborn, Grandma's voice remained steady, but I could see the anger building. How convenient that you remember Jason exists when you needed his bank account. This is not about the past, my mother insisted. This is about Noah. It is always about someone else, is it not, Margaret? Never about your responsibilities or your choices. Before I could intervene, Grandma Eleanor moved with surprising speed for her age. She grabbed my mother by her hair, not hard enough to hurt, but firmly enough to shock, and began marching her toward the front door. Grandma, I exclaimed, stunned by the uncharacteristic physical display. You have some nerve showing up here, Grandma was saying, still gripping my mother's hair as she guided her across the front yard. 16 years. 16 years you threw away your son and now you want his money. Neighbors were beginning to notice. I hurried after them, mortified and confused. Let go of me, you crazy old woman. My mother tried to pull away, but Grandma's grip was surprisingly strong. Grandma, please, I said, catching up to them on the lawn. This is not helping. Grandma released my mother's hair but stood her ground. She is lying, Jason. Not about Noah being sick. I believe that part. But there is something she is not telling you. What are you talking about? I asked. Do not listen to her, my mother said quickly. She has always hated me. Always tried to turn you against me. I think it is time you knew everything, Grandma said, ignoring her. Wait here. She turned and walked back into the house with determined steps, leaving my mother and me standing awkwardly on the lawn. Your grandmother has always been unstable. My mother began smoothing her hair, making wild accusations. Stop, I said quietly. Just stop. Whatever is going on, I am about to find out. Grandma returned, carrying a wooden box I had never seen before. It was about the size of a shoebox, dark wood polished with age, with my father's initials burned into the lid. Your father gave me this before he died, she explained, her voice gentler now. Made me promise to keep it safe until you were old enough to understand its contents. I think that time has come. She handed me the box. It was heavier than it looked. No, my mother said, her face suddenly pale. Whatever that is, it is ancient history. It has nothing to do with Noah needing help now. It has everything to do with it, Grandma replied. Inside the house, we gathered in the living room. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, visibly anxious. Grandma sat in her favorite armchair, watching my mother like a hawk. I opened the box. Inside was a leather-bound journal with my father's name embossed on the cover, several legal documents in folders, and a sealed envelope with DNA results typed on the front. Your father began keeping that journal when he first got sick, Grandma explained. At first it was to record his thoughts for you, things he wanted to tell you as you grew up. But then it became something else entirely. With trembling hands, I opened the journal to the first page, dated shortly after his diagnosis. To my son Jason, it began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and your grandmother has decided you are ready for truths I could not bear to tell you in person. As I read further, the journal revealed a devastating reality. My father had discovered my mother's affair with Victor 6 months before his diagnosis. He had confronted her, and she had promised to end it. But as his illness progressed, he had found evidence. The affair had continued: text messages, credit card receipts for hotel rooms, unexplained absences. I do not know if my illness is what drove Maggie back to him, my father had written, or if the affair would have destroyed our marriage regardless. I only know that while I am fighting for my life, my wife is planning for hers, a life that seemingly does not include me. More devastating entries followed. My father's discovery that my mother and Victor were actively planning their future together while he was undergoing chemotherapy. His overhearing phone conversations about life insurance and fresh starts. And then the most shocking revelation of all. I have reason to believe Maggie is pregnant, he wrote 3 weeks before his death. The timing makes it impossible to be mine. We have not been intimate since my diagnosis. Yet she has not announced it, perhaps waiting for my death to claim it was a final gift we shared. I cannot bear to confront her now, to spend my final days in bitter argument. But I worry for Jason. What will become of my son in this new family she is creating, even as I lie dying? The next entry described his decision to change his will to ensure I would be financially secure and that Grandma Eleanor would have legal standing to protect me. Margaret will fight this, he wrote. She will see it as punishment, not protection. But I have seen how she looks at Jason now as an inconvenience, a reminder of me that will complicate her new beginning with Victor. I fear what will happen to my boy when I am no longer here to shield him. The final pages contained the most explosive revelation. My father, suspicious about the timing and circumstances, had secretly ordered a DNA test when Noah was born. I needed to know. He had written in shaky handwriting clearly near the end. Not for myself, I will be gone before the results return, but for Jason. Because if my suspicions are correct, Noah is not Victor's son. He is mine. Conceived before my illness made intimacy impossible. Margaret's relationship with Victor was already ongoing, then the dates match her unexplained absences. I believe she does not know which man is the father, and has chosen to believe what is most convenient for her narrative. I looked up from the journal, my vision blurred with tears, to find my mother white-faced and silent. You knew, I asked Grandma. All these years you knew Noah might be Dad's biological son. She nodded gravely. The results came after your father passed. I confronted Margaret. She threatened to cut off all access to you if I ever revealed the truth. Is it true? I turned to my mother. Is Noah my full brother, not my half-brother? For a long moment she said nothing. Then almost imperceptibly she nodded. I was not sure, she whispered. The timing. It could have been either of them. Victor was so certain Noah was his, so happy about the baby. It was easier to believe him. Easier. I repeated the word like ash in my mouth. Like it was easier to throw me away when I became inconvenient to your new narrative. I never threw you away, she protested weakly. You went to live with your grandmother. You were fine. Fine. My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. You kicked me out of my own home to make room for Victor's office and what you thought was his baby. You erased every trace of Dad and me from that house within months. You barely called, barely visited. You forgot my birthdays. You missed my graduation. You were not at my engagement party last year. You have been absent for 16 years, and now you show up because you need money. For Noah, she insisted. Not for me. For your brother. The brother you never told me was actually my full brother. The brother you raised with another man's name, letting him believe a lie his entire life. The implications were sinking in. Does Noah even know I exist? Does he know he is sick? Does he know you are here? Her silence was answer enough. You told Noah you were seeking a second opinion, Grandma surmised. You did not mention begging money from the son you abandoned. I was going to pay Jason back, my mother said defensively. Once Noah was better, once we got back on our feet. Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. I will help Noah. Not for you, but for him. And for Dad. But there will be conditions. I stood, finding strength in the decision. I will pay for Noah's treatment directly to the hospital. Not a cent goes through your hands. I want a DNA test to confirm what Dad suspected, though I believe him completely. And I want to meet Noah. Properly. as his brother. He deserves to know the truth about who he is. Victor raised him, my mother protested. Finding out now would only upset him when he is already so sick. Victor abandoned him when things got difficult. I corrected her. Just like you abandoned me. The difference is, Noah will have a brother who stands by him. Starting now. The next week was a whirlwind. I arranged for Noah's transfer to Massachusetts General Hospital, where a colleague of Rachel's headed the oncology department. The DNA test confirmed what my father had suspected. Noah was indeed his biological son, my full brother. The experimental treatment Noah needed was available through a clinical trial there. No $350,000 required, just qualified medical approval, which he received. I met Noah properly for the first time in his hospital room. He was thin and pale, his dark hair so like mine, so like our father's lost to chemotherapy. But his eyes lit up with curiosity when I entered. "So you are my mysterious older brother," he said, his voice weak but spirit evident. "Mom never talks about you." "I am not surprised," I replied, taking the chair beside his bed. "We have a complicated history. You paid for all this," he gestured around the private room. "Why? You do not even know me." I looked at this boy, 16, the same age I had been when I finally accepted my mother would never be the parent I needed, and made a decision. "Because we are brothers," I said simply. "Real brothers. Same mom, same dad." His confusion was evident. "But my dad was Victor." "That is a longer conversation," I said gently. "One we should have when you are feeling a bit stronger. But I brought something you might like to see in the meantime." I pulled out my father's watch, the one he had given me before he died, the one I had kept safely all these years. "This belonged to our father," I said, placing it in his hand. "And his father before him. I think he would want you to have it now." As Noah's fingers closed around the watch, something shifted between us, a connection forming across the years of separation and lies. In that moment, I made a silent promise to my father his sons would know each other, would be family, would carry forward the integrity and love he had tried to instill in me. My mother was not happy about the revelations, the conditions, the loss of control. But she had no choice if she wanted Noah to receive treatment. When the DNA results confirmed Noah was my father's son, she attempted to rewrite history, claiming she had always had doubts and had only been trying to provide Noah with a stable family. Grandma Eleanor, still fierce at 89, shut that down immediately. 16 years too late for revisionist history, Margaret. The truth is out now. Noah's treatment was successful. As he recovered, I introduced him to Grandma Eleanor, to Rachel, to the extended family he had never known. I showed him photos of our father, told him stories of camping trips and building projects. I brought him to my office, where his natural eye for structural design, another inheritance from our father, became immediately evident. Emma, now 15, eventually joined our expanded family circle as well. While not my father's biological child, she was Noah's sister, and innocent in the machinations of the adults around her. She and Rachel formed an immediate bond over environmental science, spending hours discussing sustainability projects. My mother tried repeatedly to insert herself back into my life during Noah's recovery, playing the role of the contrite parent, seeking reconciliation. But some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. I maintained a cordial, distant relationship with her for Noah's sake, but the walls around my heart, where she was concerned, remained firmly in place. One evening, as Noah was looking through old family photos I had preserved, he asked the question I had been expecting. "Are you ever going to forgive Mom?" I considered my answer carefully. "Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation," I finally said. "I have forgiven her in the sense that I do not carry anger that hurts me anymore. But trust once broken that thoroughly does not easily return." "She is still our mother," he pointed out. "Yes," I agreed, "and you have every right to love her and have a relationship with her. That is your choice, just as maintaining my boundaries is mine." Noah nodded thoughtfully, his fingers tracing the edge of a photo showing our father holding a fishing rod, laughing at something off camera. "I wish I had known him," he said quietly. "In many ways you do," I replied. Every time you analyze a building's structure, every time you question something rather than accepting the easy answer, every time you stand by someone when it would be easier to walk away, that is Dad living on in you. 6 months after Noah's treatment ended, I legally became guardian to both him and Emma after my mother decided to find herself through extended travel. It was perhaps the most honest thing she had done in years, acknowledging that parenthood had never been her priority. Noah and Emma moved into our home, bringing new energy and perspective. Rachel embraced her unexpected role as step-parent to be with characteristic grace and intelligence. Grandma Eleanor delighted in having great-grandchildren to spoil and advise. We built a new family from the ashes of what had been lost. Not perfect, not without conflict, but founded on honesty and genuine care rather than convenience and appearance. Sometimes the greatest pain leads to the most profound healing. Being discarded at 14 forced me to build a life on my own terms, to value authenticity over pretense, to recognize that family is defined by actions rather than blood. The abandoned son became the cornerstone of a new family structure, one built to weather storms rather than collapse under pressure. As my father wrote in his final journal entry, "Life rarely gives us what we expect. The measure of a man is what he builds with what he is given." What have you built from your life's unexpected challenges? Have you ever discovered that a painful rejection ultimately led you to something better? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes being pushed out opens the door to where you truly belong. Thank you for listening. And remember, the family you create can be stronger than the one you were born into.